Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission meeting for June 9th, 2015. Before we begin proceedings, I would like to invite Pastor Jennifer Brown. Is Pastor Brown in the audience? If not, I won't be inviting Pastor Brown up from the audience to lead us in prayer. Hey, can you wing it, Vice Mayor?
Certainly.
And before we do that, could I have everyone stand, and we will have the Pledge of Allegiance following.
Dear Lord, please guide our deliberations today as we work together to improve the city of Muskegon and the larger Muskegon community. Grant us wisdom and grant us confidence that even where there are differences of opinions, we are seeking a positive outcome. In your name we pray.
Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
You're welcome.
May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Mayor Gallren,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Hood,
Here.
Vice Mayor Spataro,
Here.
Commissioner German,
Here.
Commissioner Rinsaban-Sipiga,
Here.
Commissioner Turnquist.
Here. Thank you. Now, Chief, you're probably over there, and Denny's probably here because we have some honors and awards, do we not?
That's correct, Mayor. I'm privileged to be here tonight because we have the Spring 2015 Citizen Academy graduates here with us. You know, it's hard to believe that 6 months have gone by since we just graduated other citizens of our Citizens Police Academy. And I'll tell you what, the City of Muskegon, the Police Department, you know, we work so hard towards community engagement, and it's really refreshing. We had 19 citizens of Muskegon area go through our Citizen Police Academy, which gives them an idea of what happens from dispatch all the way to the very end as we go through the criminal justice system. They're introduced to law enforcement, the different divisions, dispatch, the jail, the prosecutor's office, and many more things. But it gives them an idea of what their law enforcement services do. It gives them a glimpse inside, which makes it transparent. And it takes 10 weeks of their lives, Wednesday evenings. But I think it's pretty refreshing. I think it's pretty interesting because we have some great instructors that come out, and it's from all the disciplines around the county. This year, we started with 19, graduated 17. And unfortunately, this is one of the tougher times for graduation because a lot of the younger people are graduating from their high schools and their colleges. And this time of year, people have a lot of commitments with sports for their kids, so on and so forth. So we have a small group here tonight, but I still want everyone to understand that 17 graduated. We're very proud of that. And so our coordinator of the academy is here. He's going to read the names off. He's going to say a few things about your academy. But I was very impressed with all of you, what you did. And then I hope you go out and tell them what your experience was, and so that you saw your law enforcement services in this county firsthand. And thank you for that.
All right, I just want to make a few comments first. First of all, I want to invite anybody who's never done this to actually go through this program. We do this twice a year. We do a spring one and a fall one. We've been doing it every year since 2002. And the big thing is we want to get information out there that's correct information, and we want to answer the questions that people have. We have a different thing for every week. We know we start with central dispatch, we go through patrol procedures, detective bureau, we go through domestic violence, the court system, the jail system, everything you can think of in the criminal justice system. But we basically, the instructors get up there and they've got their agenda that they're going to talk about, but it all molds itself based upon what the students start asking questions. And that's the important thing for us, is because we want to get all kinds of good information out there. So we tell the students on day one, nothing here is secret. We want you to go out and share this information. You know, that's the more we can get the information out, the better. Okay, so encourage people to attend. It's not anything to be frightful. You can talk to some of the students if you want, but it's just a blast. And I have to say, this class was probably the most fun on the last day for the mock crime scene that we've seen in a long time, because we haven't done it this way in the past, but we actually broke it into two groups. So we had like two different groups of detectives going over this mock crime scene to see how they would each look at it and address it. So it was just a blast. So I'd encourage everybody to go through it. And congratulations to the graduates. I think we've got 5 here tonight, but we did graduate 17. The other 2 had school commitments, basically, so we didn't lose anybody because they weren't interested. They just couldn't make enough classes. So, should we go ahead and read it, and then I'll call them up afterwards? Mayor?
Well, congratulations and thank you for participating in the Academy and taking time out of your daily lives to become a part of the family here. With what you've garnered, what you've learned, please do share that with all of our fellow citizens about, well, I think the great work that our department does. And so it's with great sense of appreciation for your time that I present this resolution of recognition of the Spring 2015 Citizens Academy graduates. Whereas the City Commission desires to provide citizens with a better understanding of the functions of law enforcement, dispelling misconceptions and increasing positive communication between citizens and police, and whereas it is the desire of the Muskegon City Commission to encourage cooperation between the public and law enforcement to positively impact our communities, now therefore be it resolved that the Muskegon City Commission hereby congratulates and recognizes you for your faithful attendance, completion, and graduation from the 10-week Spring 2015 Citizens Police Academy. Congratulations, and thank you so much for coming out this evening.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor, can I have you come forward up here with the chief? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the names off, and when you hear your name, go ahead and come up and get your certificate from me, and then you'll come back past the chief and the mayor over. Okay? Does anybody want to take a picture out of the group? Okay, then we won't have them stay up afterwards. All right. Okay. All right. I guess we'll have you come up here in the front. So, Evan Bloom, Amber Carlston, Thomas Clark, Cheryl Coleman, I see these 2, Sandra Dodd, Floyd Dodd, also Edward Ellison, he's got one. Harvey Donnell, I don't think I saw. Philip Hershey, Joseph Ingalls, Stephanie Johnson, Tyler LaFear, Brianna Pond, Clifford Scott, and I think that's all we have, but I'm going to read these names. Tyler Slamkowski. Oh, you're here. You're sitting on the other side. You threw me off. Congratulations. I thought they were all clustered together. Okay, Celia Strasser and Matthew Tripp. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much, folks, and if you would like to make a beeline so you could go have dinner, I understand, because I'm hungry too. May we have the consent agenda, please?
Approval of minutes, City Clerk, summary request to approve minutes of the May 26, 2015 City Commission meeting. Staff recommendation, approval of the minutes. Fireworks display permit for Muskegon Country Club. City Clerk, summary request. Melrose Pyrotechnics Incorporated is requesting approval of a fireworks display permit for July 3, 2015 at the Muskegon Country Club, 2801 Lakeshore Drive. Fire Marshal Metcalf will inspect the fireworks on the day of the event. Staff recommendation, approval contingent on inspection of the fireworks and approval of insurance. 2015-2016 Michigan Municipal League membership dues. City Clerk. Summary request. Approval to pay the 2015-2016 MML dues in the amount of $9,647. This is an increase of $152. Staff recommendation, approval. CDBG Program Administration Agreement, City of Muskegon, City of Norton Shores, Planning and Economic Development. Summary request. The City of Muskegon has contracted with the City of Norton Shores to administer their Community Development Block Grant program since 2006. The current agreement concludes on June 30th, 2015. The new agreement includes some minor changes, such as ensuring reporting is consistent with federal requirements, liens are recorded, administration payment be not less than $22,000, and written procedures be established for receiving bids for home repairs, and extends the agreement for 2 years through June 30th, 2017. Staff recommendation to approve the agreement and authorize the mayor and the city clerk to sign. Extension of vinyl siding supplier contract for fiscal year 2015-2016, Community Neighborhood Services Department. Summary of request. To approve the extension of the contract with Keene Lumber Company to be the vinyl siding supplier for the 2015-2016 fiscal year. Keene Lumber has agreed to honor the existing contract price of $46.95 per building square for both white and color siding. Staff recommendation to approve the request. Extension of vinyl siding installer contracts for fiscal year 2015-2016, Community Neighborhood Services Department. Summary request. To authorize Community Neighborhood Services to extend the contracts through June 30th, 2016 to Mark Tucker Construction, 1620 Fruitvale Road in Holton, Michigan, and Cutting Edge, 766 Chatterson Road, Muskegon, Michigan, to install vinyl siding at an agreed price of $50 per building square for the vinyl siding programs 2015-2016 fiscal year. Staff recommendation to approve the request. Scale for DPW loader, DPW equipment. Summary request. Authorize staff to purchase one portable scale from Michigan CAT, the sole source provider, to match our loader. Staff recommendation. Authorize staff to purchase one portable scale from Michigan CAT, the sole source provider, to match our loader. City MDOT agreement, Latimer Drive resurfacing, Port City to Black Creek Engineering. Summary request. Approve the contract with MDOT for the resurfacing of Latimer between Port City and Black Creek, and approve the resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the contract. Staff recommendation, approve the contract and resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign both. Resolution in support of floodplain management, planning, and economic development. Summary request. Request for approval of resolution in support of floodplain development reporting to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to be included in the National Flood Insurance Program for the purpose of significantly reducing flood hazards to persons, reducing property damage, and reducing public expenditures, and providing for the availability of flood insurance and federal funds or loans within the city. Staff recommendation to approve the floodplain development resolution. Amendment to the City Code of Ordinances, Floodplain Management Ordinance. Ordinance Amendment, Planning and Economic Development. Summary request. Staff initiated request to amend the City Code of Ordinances to include a floodplain management ordinance, which is a new requirement by the Federal Emergency Management Agency as part of the adoption of the new flood insurance rate maps that will be effective July 6, 2015. The Planning Department will serve as the designated enforcement agency. Staff recommendation to approve the floodplain management ordinance. Community Relations Committee recommendation, summary request, to concur with the recommendations from the Community Relations Committee to accept the resignation of Steve Wisniewski from the Planning Commission and Jessica Cook from the Downtown Development Authority. Appoint Doris Rux to the District Library Board, Ronald Pesch to the Downtown Development Authority, and Jill Montgomery Keese to the Planning Commission. Staff recommendation to concur with the recommendations as listed above.
Thank you. Commissioners, you've heard the consent agenda as presented. Are there any items you wish to have removed for further discussion? Commissioner Johnson?
Seeing none, I would move to accept the consent agenda as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner German to accept the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Galvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Ritz-Masibiga?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Public hearings, please.
Transmittal of 2015-2016 proposed budget, City Manager. Summary request. At this time, staff is transmitting to the City Commission the proposed budget for fiscal year 2015-16, which starts July 1st, 2015. Both hard copy and electronic versions of the budget have been distributed to commissioners. Additionally, the budget is available for public inspection on the city's website and at the city clerk's office or Hackley Public Library. The proposed budget was reviewed in detail with staff at the June 8th work session. City ordinance requires that the budget be adopted by the commission on or before the second commission meeting in June. Staff recommendation, approval of the proposed budget for fiscal year 2015-2016.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Sure. So we went over a lot of this stuff yesterday, but I do want to make sure that I go over at least the PowerPoint presentation for the people that are in the audience and the people that are watching at home. So if you guys don't mind, some of it will be repeat for most of the commissioners, but I do want to make sure we get that out there to the public.
That's good. I'm getting older and my memory needs refreshing.
Okay, good. One thing I want to point out before I get started on this, we talked about it for a minute yesterday, but it doesn't show up in my presentation. The millage rates that we are proposing in the budget are unchanged from the current year in terms of operation and sanitation. And the promotions millage, we're proposing that it be changed from 0.0875 mils to 0.0869 mils. So just a small decrease really in the overall millage rate, but by and large, it's essentially unchanged is how I would characterize it. So the general fund, we're anticipating about $25.4 million in revenue. That's slightly more than we projected at our goal-setting session back in February. It's approximately 3.75% more than the 2015 third quarter reforecast. So the nice thing is we're seeing revenues in some areas move in the right direction. We're dependent upon creation, though, of a special assessment for street lighting. This is something that we considered last year, if you recall, but we decided kind of at the last minute to put it on hold just so we could see what ended up happening, I guess, in terms of street funding ballot proposals that seemed to be on the horizon. All of those failed at the local, county, and state level, and so here we are kind of back at this idea of how do we pay for things like streets, and in this particular situation, street lighting. So what we are proposing is a $25 per parcel street light assessment, which will cover half of the cost to provide street lights to the city based on the current cost, which is pushing $700,000. The proposal, which would be rolled out, is, be a public hearing process, and there's a process that would happen later on in the calendar year. But the thought from staff's mind is that we wouldn't apply this to parcels that had a taxable value of $1,000 or less, because at that point we thought that the $25 per year amount would be burdensome in relation to the value of the parcel. But the goal is to have an assessment at $25 per parcel citywide, regardless of the size of the parcel. Income tax revenues are conservative this year for 2016, mostly because we like to keep them conservative because you don't really know what sorts of changes could happen mid-year, and there's a potential that line item could be volatile. And we also know that the BC Comp Plan is planning on closing in the budget year in April of 2016. So just knowing that that's coming up, we want to make sure that we're conservative on the amounts of revenues that we plan for income taxes. From an expense standpoint, we're expecting just over $25.3 million in expenditures, so less in expenditures than we are in revenue. So that's a good sign. The budget's balanced, not by a lot, but the budget is balanced. It's approximately 3.5% more than the 2015 third quarter reforecast, and it does not take into account a number of potential capital improvements that we may have to make at the LC Walker Arena. Those would likely come from fund balance and or an insurance settlement we have for a building that unfortunately blew over in the parking lot across the street. But we do know there are some improvements that will have to happen there probably this summer or this fall, and we'll kind of bring those to you as we start to understand what the cost will be for those. It does continue to fund most of the general fund services at their current levels, police, fire, and all the things that we expect the city to provide. One of the big reasons why you see an increase in anticipated expenses are our pension contributions are scheduled to go up by about $573,000 this year, mostly because we did close down all of our pension funds to new employees, and we expected that over the years the contribution rate would increase as the number of retirees grew and the number of employees paying in shrunk. So we did anticipate that, and we were able to at least cover the additional expense and keep the budget balanced. And we do continue to subsidize the Smart Zone and the DDA debt to a tune of $425,000. So when you look at from a health standpoint, once we can figure out how to deal with that Smart Zone and the DDA debt over the long term, we could really see a significant amount of cash freed up in the general fund to do other things with. General fund cash reserves are going to anticipate to sit at about $5.9 million at the end of 2016. When you combine that with our $1.7 million budget stabilization fund, it moves that number up to about $7.6 million. So 23.3% of our expenditures are in reserves, and then again, when you consider the budget stabilization fund, it pushes it closer to 30%, which are healthy. So our cash reserves remain healthy. But we do have some capital needs that could temporarily draw those reserves down, and that's one of the reasons why we build up those reserves, so we can invest in improvements and capital needs as they arise. Just a little breakdown, and this is included in your budget packet. I know it's hard to read here, but if you flip to the page, you can see a little closer. But just to give you an idea of where the general fund revenues come from, 1% come from taxes. That's between property taxes and income taxes. And actually this year we're anticipating bringing in more dollars from income taxes than we are from property taxes. State share revenue is about 16%, and then all the other miscellaneous sources make up 23% of the general fund revenues. When you look over at general fund expenses, salaries and benefits are by far the largest portion, 60%. And then contractual services are the second largest. And those include a number of contractual services that we receive from organizations or from suppliers, and that would include things like safe built, things like code enforcement, things like that, things that a lot of them that maybe used to use full-time salaried employees now use outside services. This just gives you a quick snapshot of how our budgeted full-time positions have changed over the last 10 years. So you see them consistently going down since 2005, although we leveled out in 2016. But again, we continue to be less than what we were even just a few years ago. And the next the slide you see on the right up there is our general fund revenues versus expenditures. So you can kind of see over the last 10 years how our revenues and expenditures have compared to one another. Just for the audience's sake, there's one up there like right smack dab in the middle in 2010. That was a time where we had a half a fiscal year, where we went from a calendar fiscal year to July 1st fiscal year. So in that process, we had half a year. So you see up there just one smaller year in terms of revenues and expenditures up there. That was just the move when we made the move to a July 1st fiscal year. This is a projection that shows what our general fund revenues and expenses are expected to be over the subsequent 5 years after this proposed budget. Again, it remains tight. If you see on here, we do anticipate, without some management and some massaging, structural deficits for the subsequent 5 years after this year. They're at manageable levels, but they're at levels that we need to make sure we're keeping an eye on and paying attention to. If you remember, when we had this same chart in our budgets, in our goal setting session back in February, and the black line that shows our fund balance, actually at about 3 years in, it was down below the 0 mark. So although we see it going down here, our newer projections are a lot more positive than what they had been in previous years. So that's a good sign too, although we do still see it going downward. Just to see a breakdown of all expenditures outside of the general fund and including the general fund, you see that dark blue box at the bottom. It represents the general fund, and then our other major funds, water fund, sewer fund, major streets and local streets, and then our other smaller funds you see kind of broken down here too. But by and large, the city's largest single fund is our general fund. The major street fund, we are expecting to see a decrease in Act 51 funds, although we do expect that some sort of additional one-time funding will be available from the state. They've kind of made that a priority in their 2016 budget, although we just don't know what that means to us, and we probably won't know for a number of months yet, so we weren't able to budget a number in there. It could be $1, it could be $100,000, it could be more. We just do not know. But we do have 4 major construction projects underway or will be underway in the fiscal year. We'll be completing Muskegon and Webster. We'll be working on Getty Street, part of Laketon, and then some trail connection for Muskegon Trail. There are no major changes to maintenance or administration. We're expected to use $2.7 million of our cash reserves as part of this budget, which would leave our cash reserves in the major street fund at $118,000, which is really probably too small for comfort, especially when you consider a major problem could easily eat up hundreds of thousands of dollars. The reason there is such a discrepancy there in the amount of cash reserves used, we brought in about $3.3 million last fiscal year, or the fiscal year we're sitting in now, to do Muskegon and Webster, and a big portion of the actual work won't be completed until next fiscal year. So the revenue came in this year and the expense goes out next year. So that kind of it makes it look like we're using a lot of cash reserves, but a lot of it's tied to that particular project. Local street fund, we're expecting again to see a decrease in Act 51 funds, but we do expect some one-time funds to become available. When we know what those are, we'll come back to you and make sure that we do a budget amendment, but at this point, we still do not know what those will be. We don't have any major construction projects planned because there just aren't any funds available for those. And we're expected to use about $450,000 in cash reserves. If we do that, we will see our cash move into a negative situation of about $114,000 in the local street fund. So we will likely be coming back to the commission later on this fiscal year as part of the fourth quarter reforecast and recommended a transfer of about $150,000 into that fund to avoid that deficit situation. But if you look at this local street fund and the major street funds, that's kind of the problem that we were discussing last year and in previous years where we recognize that it's not that the amount of revenue coming in for major and local street maintenance is just not sustainable to keep up with the needs, and that's why we've consistently looked at options of new revenue. Sewer fund, another one of our larger funds. We're anticipating an increase in revenue. We're recommending that we tie our rate directly to the county's rate. Because our biggest expense in the sewer fund really is the treatment, and we receive that treatment from the county, it makes a lot of sense that we just automatically tie our rate to their rate at a sustainable level so that we're not coming back here year in and year out adjusting our rate every time their rate adjusts. So as it goes up or potentially down, our rate will move automatically with theirs. We have not imposed a sewer rate increase in 5 years. So the hard thing will be when we do impose the first sewer rate increase. It'll probably be larger than what we would like to see in 1 year, but it'll be smaller in future years. So we'll kind of get a readjustment back there, mostly because we just haven't touched that rate in so long. We're recommended adopting a rate originally of 1.3 you see on there, but at the commission at the work session yesterday, we thought about it and the commission recommended that we come back to you guys with a rate that kind of steps up to that 1.3. So when you see the sewer rate, I guess, adjustment resolution later on in this meeting, you'll see that it's more of a stepped increase and not just a large increase all up front. But we do expect to have available cash of about $2.2 million at the end of the fiscal year. Water fund, we're anticipating increase in revenue, mostly due to our new wholesale customers. We're not recommending a rate increase this year. We have $1.3 million in capital improvements anticipated and cash available at the end of the year of about almost $2.4 million. Other funds, aside from our tax increment funds, all of our other funds appear to be reasonably healthy. We designed a small deficit in our public service building fund, and that was mostly to provide relief to the other funds that contribute to that fund's operations. So while you look at the budget, it looks like it has about $100,000 deficit. We're purposefully kind of spending down some cash reserves this year, and then we'll be able to correct that in future budget years. But we felt that we had the ability to kind of purposefully and strategically reduce those cash reserves to help the other funds out. We also have a deficit plan for the engineering services fund, and I think we all recognize that fund will continue to struggle as long as there aren't road projects to contribute to the salaries and wages and the general fixed cost to that fund, that we will have some struggles keeping that fund afloat. So we'll probably come back to you again later on in the fourth quarter of this year and ask for $60,000 to be transferred into that fund from the general fund to keep it in a positive position. And that is the end of the basic presentation, and I can take questions from commissioners or comments from the public or however you want to do it.
Very good. Commissioners, we had the opportunity to go through this exhaustively last night. Do you have any further questions or clarifications you wanted from staff on the budget process? Commissioner Turnquist?
First of all, I'd like to thank the city manager and the division heads and all the people putting this budget together. It's a big job, and they've done an excellent job of putting it together. As I mentioned last night, I still have a concern about the public improvement fund. The plan that, and I don't see where it exactly fits into the budget, and I know it's already been funded by money coming in that had to go into the public improvement fund. And I think it's an aggressive approach, primarily by our city manager, I think, to try to provide housing in clusters in 3 chosen neighborhoods, hoping to get new housing starts and increase property values. And I understand all that. On my conservative side, I just don't like to see all of the money spending up front until we see portions of the program working. I still feel that pick a neighborhood or an area and go in thirds or whatever, rather than having a number of houses out there that are vacant. I guess I'm a little concerned at who's going to buy these houses, where the market is. I would hate to see that investors would come in and buy it and become rental properties. And I don't think we have much control over that, but we've all had not so good experiences with rental properties. So I have a concern in that area. I'd like to be a little conservative how quickly we spend that money.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And really the way I see that playing out is we wouldn't walk in there and say, let's build 20 houses or 30 houses. Probably the capacity of the builder that we have anyway they would be tiered. So maybe the goal is to get to 15 or so houses in a year, but not necessarily build them all on day one. Recognizing that they might take 90 days to build, maybe we would start a couple and wait a month and start a couple more and wait a month. But the goal from my perspective, from a sustainability standpoint, to go into a neighborhood that's struggling right now and just to put 1 or 2, we were worried about the marketability of those. But once we committed to a larger portion and made sure that we followed through with that commitment, even if it was stretched out over the course of a year, it would help people make the decision on whether or not they felt that that neighborhood was moving in the right direction or that block was moving in the right direction. We have some history of maybe doing some CNS houses one at a time, and if you don't put them in the right location, you potentially set the purchaser up for, I don't want to say for failure, but you put them in a difficult spot to succeed. If the other property values around them aren't rising, or the houses aren't also turning over or being fixed up, then that potentially could be a problem for a purchaser. And so the thought was, let's do a number of them, or at least commit to a number of them, so that when homeowner number 1 comes in, he or she is comfortable that they won't end up being the only house on that block for the next year. We're committing to doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time, and getting that kind of new, I guess, and it would be new, a new market created in these particular neighborhoods. And we might find that some of the neighborhoods have a better market than others, but if you remember, from the proposal, I kind of talked about what kind of new market rate housing we've had in the community over the last 5 years. And I might be 1 or 2 off on some of these, but I think the number was in the last 5 years, we had 21 or 22 housing starts. And 4 of those were built by us as CNS types of homes. And 4 of those were built by Habitat for Humanity. And then 8 of them were built in the Bluffton neighborhood as market rate homes in the Bluffton neighborhood. And then there were 2 of them market rate wise in the rest of the city. And then 1 of them was in Campbell Field and 1 of them was in Jackson Hill. In Jackson Hill. And I think there might have been 1 or 2 in Marquette sprinkled in there too. But when you kind of factored out Marquette and Bluffton, and then you took away the income restricted new homes, there really have only been 1 or 2 built citywide. And one of the things the concerns that we have is over the last year, right, even since I've been here, we've torn down many homes, and we've seen many other homes go into a position where they may need to be torn down and need major improvements. And the thought is, okay, do we even have the right homes in stock and available for people that want to move into our community? We can look at it and say, well, they're not moving in here, maybe they don't want to be here. But a lot of it has to do with, are the homes available? And are the homes that are available even appealing or attractive to the people that potentially would live in there? And, not everybody, I had a fixer-upper and I kind of liked it, but not everybody necessarily wants that. They might want some modern amenities and things like that. And so the thought was not to look at this as like a money maker, right? Nobody wants to lose money on a venture like this, but more as a neighborhood revitalization and just a change in the thinking of people when they're thinking of where they're going to buy a new house, so they don't automatically think, Ottawa County or Fruitport Township, they at least consider that there's market rate, middle income homes that are new design and new construction available in the city of Muskegon. And hopefully we'll get all kinds of people, and hopefully maybe we can spill in some income limited housing in there at the same time. But the goal really is to focus on market rate, because I think that there is a market there. We just haven't been able to take advantage of it because we don't have the housing stock available to them.
Commissioner German?
Yeah, that was my concern too, as well as Commissioner Turnquist. I like the idea, we talked about it before, and I guess my question would be also, will there be a type of case study in neighborhoods before they allocate those dollars to build homes there?
As far as
Which would
Which
be
neighbor-
more marketable neighborhoods to build the homes in?
Yeah.
Who do you see buyers or potential buyers that could actually afford those homes, or how it could, be an asset to the neighborhood?
So we would rely heavily on the developers themselves, or which developer we decide to go with, working with them and their history and their understanding of the market that they typically build homes for, and understanding what amenities are positive to a potential new home buyer, and what characteristics of a neighborhood might be negative. And then we would be able to, one, set our price range based on that, and then two, we'd be able to pick the area that makes the most sense based on that too. But the neighborhoods that we really thought made the most sense, if you remember in that program, were Nims, Nelson, and Jackson Hill, and there were a number of reasons why each of those were, but one of the biggest reasons was that they were so visible, right? They're very highly visible, and they all have a lot of upside, but they also have they also have their perceived negatives, and they probably have their real negatives too. And the goal was to get in those neighborhoods while they're at like a tipping point and try to make an impact on them before they get to a point where it's harder or impossible to make a change in them. And that's why we didn't look at, for example, Bluffton with the expectation that we could make a lot of money. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to hit these neighborhoods that needed a shot in the arm.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, we did have quite a bit of discussion on this yesterday, and, I understand and I appreciate the current concerns that have been expressed, because it's a risk. Anything's a risk. But to me, and this is based on years of experience with, the core neighborhood, I live in Nelson, even though this would actually be North Nelson. We're talking about Jackson Hill, which are both Ward 2. One of the things that I've seen over the years, both within the neighborhood association way back in the day when we were doing housing redevelopment, and with the community and neighborhood services, is that on the one hand, we end up turning a lot of people away because they make too much money to qualify for the program. But they want to live in our core neighborhoods. And it's, but they want something that's move-in ready. And the other thing is that there's just a certain percentage of the housing stock that has exhausted its useful life. We can go down Webster and Jefferson and in a lot of our neighborhoods where there are 100-plus-year-old homes that have been well maintained. They were very well built when they were built. They have nice amenities, and people have taken care of them. But also in our core neighborhoods are houses that were very inexpensive when they were built. They're also 100-plus years old. And even if you brought them up to current code, they just don't have the kind of amenities most families are looking for today, like storage, more than one bathroom, a full basement, a place to park your car. And that becomes an impediment. And so one of the reasons some of these houses end up tax reverted is because there's really no market for them anymore. They've exhausted their useful life. And so if we're going to continue to grow and make sure that our neighborhoods are healthy, we have to step in where the private sector hasn't, I think, in this instance, and help start renewing that housing stock so that our neighborhoods continue to be attractive to people who want to either stay here, because first and foremost, people should be able to stay in the neighborhood they grew up in if they can find the house they want, and for people who want to move here. Anecdotally, one of my neighbors sent out a social network blast just a few days ago because a coworker wants to be downtown and can't find housing. And, you know, we shouldn't have situations like that. There ought to be options for everybody. And I think we do a good job providing housing options for people who are of modest means, but I don't think we do a very good job of ensuring that there's options for, you know, everybody else. And we're not talking about the affluent. The affluent, they go where they go. But people like all of us up here who work hard and just want a nice place to raise their family and maybe don't want to take on a major renovation project by going into an older home that needs a lot of TLC. So I think this is a reasonable risk to take. This is not operations dollars. These are one-time funds. And I think, you know, it's worth the risk. And I think we will see the benefit fairly quickly by doing this. So that's my 2 cents on this topic. Again, I think the budget was well put together. You know, it's never easy with shrinking funds from the state in particular. But I'm prepared to support it, even those bits that cause me a little concern. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
One other question. What other things could be paid for out of the public improvement fund?
For example, included in that, the number in the public improvement fund that's in the budget here now, there's playground equipment for Pure Marquette Park. Remember, we budgeted that last year, then we pulled it out when we were running short on funds, so that's proposed to go back in there. We've paid for a fire truck out of that fund. This is kind of newer to us. Before, if you look at the line items on there, there's like sale of city property and things like that that go in there. But these cash distributions from our insurance company are, you know, they're new within the last probably 5 or 6 years. I'm looking for Derek to nod his head yes or no if he agrees with me or not. But they haven't been this substantial to where we've been able to do these kinds of things with them on a regular basis. That's why we put them in a place like this and use them for things that we want to try, but we don't want to, we don't want to say, for example, roll them into the general fund and use them for everyday operations and kind of get hooked on the money or, you know, or become reliant on the money. So we use it on things where we want to give a try, things that we think we need, capital things, for example, or this type of project, that wouldn't be relying on it year in and year out.
I continue to be supportive of it. I appreciate that you may see it as a risk. I don't think it is as big as a risk as you know, it could be. I would have been gung-ho on going for a $3 million bond and hitting all 3 neighborhoods all at once, if I had my desire. I really would have. I had approached prior administrations probably 5 or 6 years ago proposing such an idea because this single site, once in a while type of approach doesn't have the impact that we need to really turn around a neighborhood. We were talking about taking those wide swaths, you know, a full block at a time or 2 blocks at a time, really making an impact in recreating a neighborhood and bringing in houses on those empty lots or where we have dilapidated and substandard or no longer inhabitable property. But at the time I started talking about it, we were deep in the midst of the recession, more like a depression. And there was an appreciation for the approach because we knew that even though we've done a very fine job in what we've done prior to and during the recession, which was keeping the city stable, we knew that we would have to get out of that siege mentality and go for that gusto and go for those projects that could hopefully incite and invite, you know, others, you know, to participate as well. So I think it's a project whose time has come and well placed, and you know, I will continue to support it as part of the budget. Are we set with questions or input at this time, Commissioners? If so, are there any members of the public that would like to address the budget process at this time? If not, Vice Mayor?
One last opportunity for anybody out in the public. Otherwise, I would move that we close the public hearing and approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 2015-2016.
Second.
It's been moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Johnson, to approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 2015-2016. Any discussion? Commissioner German?
Hey, I didn't get a chance to say congratulations to Mr. Derek Smith on a job well done, and department heads, so
You're here.
good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek. Thank you for all the work of your team and all the department heads. You have a magnificent way of taking our thoughts and other theories that float out there and doing a bang-up job. Thank you very much. Thank you. New business, please.
No, we need roll call.
Vote.
Oh, we need a roll call, please.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spataro,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Winston Massipiga.
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Galvin.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Now new business?
Yes.
Okay.
Resolution to place a question on the November ballot, City Manager, summary request. Resolution of the City Commission to propose for adoption by the voters of the City of Muskegon an amendment to the city charter concerning an additional millage exclusively for street improvements and street maintenance. Staff recommendation to adopt the resolution to propose an amendment to the city charter to the voters of the City of Muskegon.
Commissioner Johnson?
I move to adopt the resolution to propose an amendment to the city charter to the voters of the city of Muskegon.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Winston Massipiga, to adopt the resolution to propose an amendment to the city charter to the voters of the City of Muskegon. Discussion?
Did we not talk about 2 mills last?
Yes, sir.
Not in this.
Yeah,
I don't
this-
It
see a
sta-
number
it
on
states
the-
it in the resolution.
On the one that I have.
It's in section 7, taxation general powers. It indicates that tax levy shall not exceed 12 mills, and indicates that 2 mills of the total city levy shall be used exclusively for the financing of street construction, repair, and maintenance in the city of Muskegon. So,
Okay.
fortunately, with this new language,
I didn't go far enough.
once we approve this resolution, we'll be going to the Attorney General for the state of Michigan, and he will approve the language, hopefully. We've got an indication that it likely will pass. I'm supportive of this. I think we need to make these investments. They're critical. Even though the millage last fall for 4 mills requests, and the county earlier this year, and then the state have all failed, I'm confident that the voters of the city of Muskegon will approve this millage for 2 mills, and it being tied exclusively to our road maintenance and repairs. And I think they will realize the benefits of this and making these critical investments in our infrastructure. I'm pleased with this and will wholeheartedly be supporting it.
Thank you. Commissioner German?
And I think that's the key point, Commissioner, having it tied directly toward street repair. I think there definitely needs to be a level of transparency, and actually in some detail stating which roads would actually be designated, I think would also help too, to assure voters that they could depend on what the commission is proposing, but after all, it's going to be up to the voters to pass this. So.
Gentlemen? Commissioner German, or Hood?
Yeah, I'm all for this also, and I think it will pass this time. And like the other commissioner said, I think the key thing is that it's stating that it's going to be used specifically for roads. And the process that you have in place to pick what roads are needed the most, I think is a good way of going about this also.
Thank you. Anything else, Commissioners? Vice Mayor?
Just, I concur with what's been said, and, for anybody who's curious, when you look at our capital improvement proposed projects going forward, it includes a lot of local streets, so if you get an idea, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's online, isn't it? So, that's transparent. The streets that are on the list, that would be done if there's funding. Clearly, 2 mills would be not more than enough to just get started on some of them, but I think at this point, we realize the county proposal's not coming back. The state legislature basically kicked the can down the road once again, and if we want decent drivable streets, we're going to have to take care of them ourselves, like we've done a lot of other things. So I think this addresses the objections we all clearly heard from the electorate on the previous proposal, and hopefully people can rally behind this and we can start fixing more streets.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Anything else, gentlemen? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Muskegon?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Gallman?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item B, please.
Sewer rate adjustment, Finance Director, summary request. The city last adjusted sewer rates on January 1st, 2010, a 25% increase. Since then, Sappy Paper closed its mill facility, which was the largest use of the county wastewater system. The county wastewater treatment facility has had a difficult time adjusting to the loss of revenues from the closure of the Sappy mill. Consequently, the county has implemented a number of rate adjustments increases over the past several years. Since 2010, the city has been absorbing these increases internally, which has reduced our case reserves. Accordingly, we are asking the City Commission to approve a treatment rate for our customers that is based on a multiplier of the rate the county bills the city for wastewater treatment. Staff recommendation, adoption of the fee adjustment resolution.
Thank you. Commissioner Muskegon?
I move we adopt the fee adjustment resolution in regards to the sewer rate adjustment.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Muskegon, seconded by Commissioner Hood, to adopt the fee adjustment resolution regarding the sewer rates. Discussion? Vice Mayor?
Just to point out that the sewer rates ultimately are controlled by the wastewater board based on the cost of operating the countywide wastewater system. And like any other business, ultimately we have to pass those increased costs on to the end user, or, there's no money to subsidize that. So I think this eliminates going through a short period of time and then having larger increases. And hopefully if there's some larger users that come on and the rates go down, that will happen automatically with this proposal as well.
And the end users include each one of us
Absolutely.
sitting here,
Everyone up here.
because we live in Muskegon County. Okay, very good. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Gallman?
Yes?
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Muskegon?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Commissioners, is there any other business? Just want to remind everybody that this Saturday when's the ribbon cutting at the playground?
11 a.m.
11 a.m., corner of Davis and Southern. The playground equipment is up, and the NIMS neighborhood has a playground again due to the hard work of Jen Sinaki on the board of the NIMS Neighborhood Association, the rest of the board and its membership, and the generosity of funders, including the Community Foundation for Muskegon County and the City of Muskegon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So hopefully see you out there, and I'll push you on the swing.
They just took a
Teeter
turn.
totter.
Just took
Are
a
there any members of the public who would like to address the commission before we go have dinner? Commissioner Hood.
If there's nothing else, I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hood, seconded by the Vice Mayor to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, good evening then, all.